Now, this week, week 17, like a lot of games around the league, both of these teams have nothing to prove. Both of these teams are just better off losing at this point. But that does not mean every player has the same mentality. Every player may not be playing for a Super Bowl, a playoff run, but they have a lot to prove. And this week, we're going to be looking at 5 Minnesota Vikings that have a lot to prove. Week 17 matchup against the New Orleans, I was about to say Saints, that was last week, against the Detroit Lions. Now they are going to Detroit. This is going to be a 12 o'clock Central on Sunday game. And the Minnesota Vikings, this is the final game of the season. Finally, of course I love watching the Vikings. But when it's the last week and the season has looked like how it's looked, it's good that it's coming to an end and we can look to the 2021 season. But we're going to be looking at, there's still a lot to watch for. Of course, the Minnesota Vikings lose in this matchup. Like, it doesn't matter. But there's a lot to watch for, and these players have a ton to prove. Starting off at number 1, the biggest player with a lot to prove is KJ Osborne, our 5th-round draft pick out of Miami. Now, I was a huge fan of this guy. Now, KJ Osborne, coming out of Miami, was a great special teams returner. And that's why the Minnesota Vikings took him. They needed a new special teams returner, and this was a clear need for the Minnesota Vikings. After the 2019 season, the special teams almost ruined us. We were starting Marcus Sherrills in the postseason. We grabbed a free agent guy in the postseasons to start because we had nobody. Amir Abdullah was looking awful. CJ Ham was looking terrible. All these guys were fumbling, and it was honestly ruining our season. Now, of course, the entire special teams was not bad, as Dan Bailey was having his best season of his career. But at the same time, the special teams return game is what I'm focusing on here, and that's what KJ Osborne has a lot to prove. KJ Osborne is now activated after Mike Zimmer did put him as inactive. I think this was a few weeks ago. He did get injured as well, but KJ Osborne has had an awful rookie season. They took him to just be a starting punt returner and kick returner. That's the only reason why the Minnesota Vikings took him. And if he cannot solidify himself as a solid starter, he's not going to be on the team. His main role is a wide receiver, but I don't think he has any role as a wide receiver here. You look at the Vikings wide receivers, we have Justin Jefferson, we have Adam Thielen, we have Chad Beebe, we even have Irv Smith, who can play as a wide receiver. We don't need KJ Osborne. And this is the reason why he's the biggest, he has a lot to prove, because he has to prove himself as a starting special teams returner. He cannot solidify himself as a spot on the active roster as a wide receiver. So we're going to look at it. So how has he played so far this season? Well, completely awful. He's fumbled 2 fair catches so far this season against the Jaguars and the Cowboys, 7 punt returns so far this season with only 27 yards in the punt return game on an 8-yard long. His longest punt return is at 8 yards. And then 14 kick returns on 303 yards with a 38-yard long. Now, he's had one good kick return. That was the 38-yarder. He has had one good kick returner, and that was early on in the season. Since then, we have looked awful. I don't know why the Minnesota Vikings just didn't use Mike Boone as a kick and punt returner. You saw in the preseason, in 2019 preseason, you saw what Mike Boone can do as a kick returner. And they kept with Amir Abdullah. Amir Abdullah is another player who has a lot to prove. We're going to get into that. Starting up with number 2, Alexander Mattison. Now, of course, Alexander Mattison, you can't just get rid of him. He's not playing for his job this game, but he's playing to show that he is worthy of a running back too. We know Alexander Mattison has talent. We have seen it in 2019. We saw it the second half of the Seattle game. But the last game he started is what we remember most, and that was against the Atlanta Falcons, where he had 10 carries for only 26 yards. Awful game. He also had like a 2-yard reception. That was the last game he started. And we remember that Atlanta game as being one of the worst games we have seen from this Minnesota Vikings team in a long time. Alexander Mattison does have a lot to prove. Now, of course, even if he bombs and looks awful as a starting running back, the reason why I have him here is because Dalvin Cook was ruled out because his father, James Cook, was passed away unexpectedly due to COVID. So now he will not be playing this week, Dalvin Cook. So we have Alexander Mattison, who is going to be our starting running back. Honestly, if Dalvin Cook was playing this week, I still don't know if it would be the smart thing to start him the whole game. Use him as a running back 1, of course, but still, you should bench him to see what Alexander Mattison can do, because Alexander Mattison has got to be ready to be a starting running back, because what we saw against the Atlanta Falcons, he is not ready. And when you have a running back like Dalvin Cook, who is very injury prone and he is going to go out with an injury, he has not played a full season yet his entire career. He has not played a full 16 games because he's just been injured every season so far. Now, this season was great. He was only out for 1 game. Now, you can count this as another game where he's out, but this is not due to an injury. This is a family issue, basically. Something outside of that. But anyways, Alexander Mattison, he has to be ready to be a starting running back. Now, he's no running back 1. He's not a guy you want to use as a running back one, but he's got to be ready to play as a running back one when Dalvin Cook goes out with the injury. Because it's not if, it's when Dalvin Cook goes out with another injury. So Alexander Mattison has a lot to prove as a running back two, because or else Vikings are going to be having to look at this offseason, maybe looking for someone else and keep Mattison as the running back three. And we have Mike Boone already. We have Amir Abdullah. Both players are going to be undrafted free agent or unrestricted free agents. No, Mike Boone's going to be a restricted free agent. Amir Abdullah will be an unrestricted free agent this next offseason. But number 3, Ezra Cleveland. Now, Riley Reif is now out with, he's on COVID reserve or something like that. So Ezra Cleveland is our second-round draft pick out of Boise State, and the Minnesota Vikings took him to be a left tackle. Now, you look at Riley Reif. He has had his best season of his career. Riley Reif has played so well in 2020, and there is no reason to get rid of Riley Reif. Well, a year ago, I would have said completely different. A year ago, Riley Reif was way too overpaid, and we needed someone else. But right now, Riley Reif is our clear left tackle, our clear starting left tackle. Now, they can trade him. I mean, you can get a lot for Riley Reif. Trade him when he's high, get players when they're low. You can trade Riley Reif. And in that case, Ezra Cleveland would be our starter. But Riley Reif now is not playing this week, and we have Rashad Hill on the depth chart. They announced Rashad Hill as a starting left tackle. I'm a huge fan of Rashad Hill. I'm a huge fan of Rashad Hill, and I'm so happy the Vikings have him because he adds depth to the O-line when players go out like this, when players cannot play. He adds depth to the O-line. It's good to know you have someone out there who can at least play. It's good you don't have a Drew Samia coming out playing. It's good you don't have Pat Elflein. It's good that you have Rashad Hill coming out and being that second. But why are they not starting Ezra Cleveland? He still has a lot to show. I mean, he's outlived. When they drafted Ezra Cleveland in the second round, he was going to be a backup his first season. And now he's been starting most of the games at right guard because of how bad that right guard position is. Next season, Ezra Cleveland has got to prove he needs to be our starting left guard or left tackle. The only way he would be a starting left tackle is if the Vikings trade Riley Reif. There's no reason of benching Riley Reif. But at the same time, Ezra Cleveland has got to be our starting left guard or left tackle in the 2021 season and has a lot to prove this game. Of course, he's not playing for his job. Obviously, he's not playing for his job. But if you take a player in the second round and he's just a backup or a right guard for most of the rest of his career, he's got to be a left guard or left tackle. That's not worth it at all. That's not worth it at all. The entire defensive line comes in at number 4 with the most to prove. This defensive front is the worst Vikings defensive front I have seen in the last 10 years. Of course, we don't have Danielle Hunter. He got injured on IR for the rest of the season. We lost Everson Griffin. We lost Linval Joseph. We brought in Michael Pierce. He opted out of the season. Afadi Shamar, Jaleel Johnson, and Jalen Holmes as our starting defensive line. I don't know why Jalen Holmes is still on our starting defensive lineup. I mean, after that we got rid of Yannick Ngakoue, I don't know why they just didn't start DJ Wanham off the bat. Mike Zimmer is so slow to start rookies in the NFL, it is insane. Because it's so clear that DJ Wanham is better than Jalen Holmes. He needs to be our starting our right defensive end. Afadi is possibly one of the slowest defensive ends in the league. I don't know why he's starting out there. Shamar Stephen has played awful. I mean, he has, one more year left of him, and Shamar Stephens is done. Jaleel Johnson just looks like a backup. There's nothing that looks like a starter as Jaleel Johnson. So even Michael Pierce and Danielle Hunter coming back, some of these guys cannot be starters anymore. I mean, Shamar Stephen, he's done. Shamar Stephen is going into his 30s. You don't need him anymore. He's had a great career. I mean, he was a 7th-round draft pick. Exceeded expectations by far. Afadi Odenigbo, undrafted free agent, exceeded expectations. You can give that to them, but they're not starters. These guys are not starters. And that's why they have a lot to prove, because honestly, some of these guys don't even look like they should be in the NFL at this point. I mean, you have backups that look better. Mata Afa looks better. DJ Wanham looks better. You have James Lynch. Who else do you have? There's this Brailford guy coming in. I mean, these backups look better than our starters right now. They have a lot to prove, this entire defensive front, and this needs to be a primary focus this Vikings offseason. Coming in at number 2. I mean, when you look at it, of course, guard is the primary focus this offseason, but defensive lineup, you need to get that defensive line better because this looks awful. Anyways, number 5, Justin Jefferson. Now, of course, Justin Jefferson's on this list for a completely different reason. All these guys need to prove that they are starters. All these guys need to prove that they solidified themselves as on the defensive lineup or even just earning an active roster spot. Justin Jefferson needs to prove that he is the true rookie of the year because we know it. I mean, Justin Jefferson has broke multiple records. Most 100 yards receiving games by a rookie. Most receptions by a rookie. Now he is coming up on the most receiving yards by a rookie and still is not going to get rookie of the year. He needs to prove himself as the true rookie of the year. This week without Dalvin Cook. Now, of course, when you play the Detroit Lions, the easiest way to win is just use Dalvin Cook. That's the easiest way to win. But this matchup, if you give Justin Jefferson you can win against the Lions so many different ways. I'll say that right now. You can feed Justin Jefferson and win against the Lions. It's not going to happen, but you can do that. Anyways, Justin Jefferson, if he gets 110 receiving yards or more, breaks the all-time rookie wide receiver record for most receiving yards in the rookie season, of course. If he gets 110 yards receiving. Very possible against this Lions defense because you can win in multiple different ways. Or he can break the franchise record with just 46 receiving yards, passing up Randy Moss, who broke that record, the franchise record in 98. Justin Jefferson has a lot to prove because he is the true rookie of the year. But of course, Justin Herbert is out there playing as a quarterback, and he's going to get it just because he's a quarterback. But this matchup, Justin Jefferson can prove that he's a true rookie of the year. And that's why I have him as one of the players who have a lot to prove this matchup. And I think, honestly, just give the ball to Justin Jefferson because I really think that's the easiest way to win. Without Dalvin Cook, the easiest way to win, just use Justin Jefferson. Use him for all of his abilities because he is an easy matchup. Easy matchup this week against that Detroit Lions defense. I mean, of course, you can use Adam Thielen, best wide receiver in the red zone. You can use him. But Justin Jefferson, you can use for a deep threat. Short, you can use him in many different ways is what I'm trying to say. Let me know what y'all think. Who else has something to prove?